Right, good morning, everybody. It's 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday, the 3rd of July. This is a Project Edward First Friday conversation, and I'm very pleased to introduce our guest, which I will do in a moment. So I'm James Luckhurst. This conversation's being recorded. You will find that your camera and microphone are enabled because the nature of this is that we'll have a chat for about half an hour, I'm imagining, followed by your opportunity to ask questions, and our guest will be pleased to answer them. What I would say, if you are asking questions, please also use the chat, but keep them as questions. Don't make long comments that really are irrelevant. And so questions that are relevant or comments relevant to what we're talking about is what we really want. So thank you in advance for that. Good. Right. Without further ado, this is Dr. Tim Johnson, the Deputy Programme Director at the Cardiff University Medical School. Tim, thank you so much for joining us. You're very welcome. Today, I think we're looking at how realistic road traffic collision simulations can shape the next generation of clinicians and emergency responders by giving them a safe but emotionally powerful environment to learn about major trauma and multi-agency working. So look, we're all keen to explore what you've done at Cardiff, what you've learned, and how this might influence patient outcomes and wider road safety thinking. So that's enough from me. Would you like to start by telling us a bit about who you are, what you're doing, and perhaps we'll have a look at that video to kick off. But over to you.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tim Johnson, as James has said. I'm Deputy Programme Director for the undergraduate medicine programme at Cardiff University. My background, sort of my primary role is teaching systems physiology to the students, but my specialist interests are in delivering medicine that relates to the acutely unwell patient. In particular, for the last 7 or 8 years now, I've been particularly interested in looking at trauma care in the pre-hospital environment for our students, and giving our students exposure to that pre-hospital emergency medicine environment.
Simulation exercises for road traffic collisions give UK emergency services a safe, controlled way to rehearse exactly what they will need to do when responding to a real event. By bringing police, fire, ambulance and doctors together around realistic collision scenarios, they can test joint decision-making, practice communication, refine rescue techniques and check that plans, equipment and protocols actually work under pressure. Cardiff University's Medical School has been coordinating such exercises for several years. Dr. Tim Johnson is the school's Deputy Programme Director.
The first year we ran this as a live event. We had a single car, 1 fire crews, a couple of police officers, 3 or 4 casualties. And over the period of several years, this has grown and grown and grown into a simulation event that we're running at the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service Training and Development Centre on Monday, with over 120 responders from the various agencies, along with 330 students from the medicine programme, and 15 and 20 students from our adult nursing programme. So it's grown from something really small into something huge.
In 6 years, more than 2,000 trainee physicians have been through the programme, as well as more than 700 emergency service responders. The simulation day is preceded by a training seminar. We met some of the presenters and found out the purpose of their involvement.
So I'm here to educate the students on the very first start of an emergency call. So when you pass the 999 call, what the process is, what it involves, the kind of questions you might be asked, where you can help the individuals involved in whatever you might be witnessing, whether it be a road traffic collision, whether it be a house fire, how we can assist them.
It's a fantastic opportunity for not only the emergency services to get together, to work together, to understand the JESIP principles and to work closely with each other, but it's brilliant to be educating and supporting the medical staff to get them to understand the intricacies and the detail required in road traffic collisions, to get them to get a feel of what it's like to be outside, and to understand the importance of what's required to make sure that we deal with these situations safely and to the best of our abilities, so we give the best outcomes for everyone involved.
These guys are going to be the future doctors of Wales. So it doesn't matter what speciality they go into, there's an expectation that they'll be able to do something.
From my perspective, I'm here. We've got a group of medical students that are learning about dealing with the aftermath of road traffic casualties and crashes. What I'm helping to do is persuade them that not treating them is best of all by actually stopping them from happening in the first place. My job is to really look at how we can advocate for ways in which we can prevent as many road traffic casualties as possible.
The audience was made up of Cardiff University's Year 2 medical and nursing students. So, ahead of their involvement in the simulation, what were some takeaways from the seminar?
My name is Chen Yan and I'm a second year medical student here at Cardiff.
My name is Henry McCoy. I'm also a second year medical student at Cardiff.
I think the main thing today was working in a team. There's so many people involved in RTCs and it's so important to have good communication, making sure everybody's on the same page, and I really got that through each of the presentations. You could see them bring back each other and each other's professions and the respect and the coordination needed. It was really amazing. It was really interesting to see what actually goes on behind the scenes but also during the scenes as well. That's really interesting.
I think my big takeaway was the importance of trying to keep things as they were when the incident happened. So once the actual extraction is taking place, to ensure that there's a proper police investigation afterwards, to ensure that the three main branches, police, fire, ambulance, are working together, that things are kept as similar as the way they are, because that can ultimately be of great benefit to families and to victims later on. If there's a full and thorough police investigation, and again the communication between the teams to ensure that takes place, I think that's a key takeaway.
Cardiff now has the blueprint for a highly effective large-scale training opportunity, which Tim Johnson says can be recreated by other medical schools and their partners.
Now, the people that I work with, from like yourself, Project Edward, United Kingdom Rescue Organisation, Fire and Rescue Service, MedServe, Fire Control, South Wales Police, and the Welsh Ambulance Service, we've got a team of very, very passionate people that are passionate about training and simulation. And with that, you get a small number of people from the various agents that are passionate. This is replicable anywhere.
Thank you very much, Tim. I hope you can see and hear me, and we'll crack on. So the first question is really to take a look at that large-scale undertaking and what prompted Cardiff to invest in something as big as that, as a road traffic collision simulation for second-year medical students, and what problem you were trying to solve in their education.
Okay, yeah, a little bit of history here. Pre-COVID, sort of about 2014 onwards, we used to run what was called a rural health program as part of our community clinical learning program. And a colleague of mine, Francis Gerard, used to run a small scale road traffic collision simulation in the grounds of Bronleith Hospital in mid Wales. Fortunately, COVID came along. That had to stop for 2 or 3 years. At the same time, on the back of that, for a number of years, Cardiff graduates, in fact, all graduates from medicine programs, undertake what's called a graduate survey for the General Medical Council. And Cardiff graduates, for a number of years, had identified that they were not as well prepared for dealing with acutely unwell patients. And that's something the university took on board. In fact, as a medical school, we were well down the bottom in terms of our graduates feeling that they were prepared for dealing with acutely unwell patients. And so we put a strategy together and a theme across our program called the Acute Care Prepared Strategy. And within that, I developed a 2-week block in acute illness, which now forms sort of the end of year 2, where we're looking at acute illness in all of its forms, from things like sepsis, treatment of sepsis, pulmonary embolism within the secondary care environment. But within that 2-week block, we also look at the acute illness in the pre-hospital arena. And So I wanted to resurrect it. So we were in the middle of COVID at the time, and I wanted to resurrect this road traffic collision simulation. And everybody asked me, how did you get this off the ground? And I think the word serendipity probably sort of summarizes why this came about. I had a friend that had just started working with the fire service. Our kids are in the same primary school. It was a conversation at the school gate about trying to put something together. And then so that was my friend Richard Barton. He then went and talked to his boss, Roger McGann, who was his station commander at the time, who then talked to George Fisher in fire control. Also at the school gate, I got a friend, Will Hedges. He works for the Welsh Ambulance Service. He sort of said, "Oh, I've got some interested people here. Do you know Beth Barton, who's an ICU consultant? And then I know Ian Bowler, who works at MedServe, who are the basics doctors that help assist the emergency services, doctors who volunteer to assist the emergency services." And then Roger said, "Oh, do you know Mike Prickett, who's actually on the call, who works for South Wales Police?" And it's just grown and grown and grown. We've had a lot of support from commercial partners, Grant Lewis, who works for Safeguard Medical, Stephanie Farmer. She runs a program at Cardiff and Vale College in moulage and makeup in special effects. And we've grown this team into something that can now put on one of these large mass casualty events.
Can I ask you, if I may, about that importance? There's two words in my introduction. It's safe, but it's emotionally powerful. So all of those things, like the moulage, the makeup, and the sirens and the noises, that's for you vital to make it realistic and sort of so it makes an impact.
Yeah. So it's. Well, I've got a little video here. You might want to see it. Would you want me to play this video, which we're going to give you? It's only 90 seconds, a little snapshot of the sort of the setup that we've got. I can cue this up.
Just remember to include sound.
Yes, I will do. So when I go share, I got that little box. There we go. Okay, so
go for it.
Hopefully this will play for you.
No one really wants to witness a situation like this.
Hello, fire service.
Your priority is, if this was a member of my family, I've got to be switched on.
This is going to be one of the first times they've ever seen a traumatic situation unfold in front of them. You don't know what you're going to come across. Screaming, chaos, multiple injuries, and it is scary to see sometimes.
We come here today for an RTC simulation. It's for the students to evaluate how fire, police and ambulance work together on the scene of an accident.
Put your faith back in humanity that in such a dark moment, all these people come in with sole focused on helping.
They look to you as the leader. You're the calm in the middle of the storm.
None of this would happen if it wasn't for effective communication.
The students have seen that passion, and the students can see how important this is.
By having a more realistic approach, when they see it in reality, they're not going to freeze.
Seeing it unfold in front of me and hearing it through my earphones really made it an immersive experience.
The realism of it thrown in your face really allows you to understand the principles that underpin everything. It's definitely made me more interested in emergency medicine.
It's just really rewarding being able to make an impact so quickly on a patient's life. That's one thing I really like about Cardiff Uni, is that they have a lot of practical-based components of teaching.
It's really opened my eyes actually to emergency medicine.
It's experiences like this that really help prepare the next generation of our healthcare professionals.
Thank you very much for that, Tim. Let's move on and talk about how you put that together then. So how did you and your colleagues go about scripting those scenarios and choosing the wreckage and presenting the injuries so that they were convincing but perhaps not too overwhelming?
Yeah, it's interesting to use the word script. We like to use the term storyboard because it's the storyboarding process is a really complex process. What you have to do to create it. Let's go back. The reason why we don't want it scripted, we want to create a scenario. We have 4 scenarios that we run across the day. We've got 4 45-minute scenarios, all of which are different. we've created a storyboard because once we start the scenario, we have a prediction as to how they're going to run. It doesn't necessarily run to script, because once you start the clock, we want it to run in real time with people making real decisions in real time. So if they make a decision that we don't expect them to make, it just needs to run. And so what we do is that the first part of your storyboarding process is that you have to appreciate we want people to necessarily make mistakes. I think it was Oscar Wilde that said experience is simply the name we give to our mistakes, and that you learn from getting things wrong. And we want people to go in, make decisions, right or wrong, and be in a safe place. So actually they can have, if they've made the wrong decision, they can reflect on that afterwards, because that's where most of your learning is. And so our starting point is actually, as with most things, it has to be logistics. So we've got to work out what assets we have available. So the number of vehicles, the agencies, and the number of crews and assets that each of the agencies can provide. We then have to think about what we can actually physically do with those cars. So there are only so much force that we can place on a car to pre-stress it prior to the event. Like we can't concertina a car that we've just got. We just can't replicate a real crash. So there are limitations, which is what we have to start. So we then start to look at each vehicle that we've got. Are there bulkheads, electric seats? What are the sort of challenges that potentially safely we can do with that vehicle, and some of the technical challenges that we offer to the crews to get into and around that vehicle. And then our next step, which some people may argue should be the first step, we then need to think about the learning objectives. Now, the storyboarding process is what we call it. It's a multi-layered process of generating learning outcomes. Our first starting point is each stakeholder puts forward their wish list of what their learning objectives need to be. Now, there may be very specific ones, like fire and rescue service may be interested in having particular crews doing a heavy lift. It might be from the Welsh Ambulance Service and from the MedServ doctors, a thoracotomy. It could be they want to do a resuscitative hysterotomy, some specific medical procedure, and then broader objectives, which often usually come up, like incident command structures, demonstrating Jessup principles, etc. And we collate all of those shared learning objectives.
Just to stop you there, Tim,
Yeah.
just give us, for those who may be on the call who may not be familiar with Jessup, just give us a quick run, 30 seconds on what Jessup principles are.
It's a protocol that all agencies used. That it's a joint emergency joint emergency services interoperability protocol. So basically, this is just a SOP. It's a working practice that ensures that you get effective team working and joint working when emergency services come together in things like major incident events. And it's just a protocol that they all use to ensure that they sort of follow the script in major incidents. So we do that. We get a learning objectives. We then have to recruit our casualty volunteers. Now, that's a really important process, because it's not just a case of saying you volunteer, we're going to stick you in a car. They have to form part of that storyboarding process, because we have to screen them for past medical history. Are they claustrophobic? Do they have asthma? Do they have stress-related past medical history? We look at sex, disability, gender reassignment, beliefs, languages, because a lot of those factors will have an effect potentially on their effective care, and potentially also create some very important learning for responders. So a good example, we asked some of our students, are you bilingual? And it's very useful sometimes. We often put in the scenarios, a scenario where that person does not communicate in the medium of English. We have to be very careful when we consider a student's disability. You know, if we have a student that has to have a wheelchair, you know, you have to be very sensitive to what they're willing to do and not do, and what they are they feel comfortable doing. We may ask them to use derogatory language. Some may or may not be comfortable in doing that. We ask them about their demeanor. Do they tend to get panicky, or do they tend to shut down? And all of this then information allows us, once we start to build the story, so we look at the mechanism of the crash, the cause, the mechanism of the structural damage to the vehicles, and we then start to look at the mechanisms of injury, we can then more safely match each volunteer to those specific roles. We then feed that information up into the makeup team that work at Cardiff and Vale College, and Stephanie Farmer's group at Cardiff and Vale College, that then sort of tinker with that to add what levels of realism they can bring to each of those casualty injuries, or come back and say that's an injury we can't work with. So what we're trying to do is create a really realistic injury profile, and then we complete the cycle by just checking, once we've been through that whole process, have we lost any of the learning outcomes? You know, sometimes we have a learning outcome and it just might not be safe or logistically possible to deliver. But that storyboarding process is absolutely essential as part of your risk assessment to ensure that everybody's safe. But the big thing for us, James, is the responders that turn up into each of those scenarios don't know what's coming on the day. We don't share that. We don't share that with anyone. The only people that know are a very small number of people. So Mike Prickett, you might see on the call, he's one of the people that know. He's from South Wales Police. Beth Barton, myself, Roger McGann from Fire and Rescue Service. There's only a small number of us that actually know what they're going to be challenged with. And that's really important. We want them to react in real time with what's happening in front of them, because that's where the biggest learning is.
Let's talk about how you ensure that the students who are there watching have the kind of opportunity to reflect constructively on what they've seen, rather than just kind of see it as drama and have a stressful reaction.
Yeah. So you mentioned that sort of... we tend to get these simulations, we do pack a lot into them because we want to make the most of the opportunity of bringing a large number of people together. And there's a lot going on in there. Now, we have a cohort in year 2 of about 320 students. Across the whole day, between 50 and 60 of those students will actually have an active role as a patient, as a casualty in one of those scenarios across the day. As you said, the remainder are then watching and observing. That creates quite a challenge, obviously, in terms of them being able to make sense of what's going on inside the arena. And so what we do is we've got audio feeds from the various incident commanders that are in that scene with a mixing desk. So what happens is that we can get feed in from the radio frequency mics that come into the central desk. At the central desk, we've got George Fisher from Fire Control, who'll be managing the first call, the first contact. That gets broadcast. Then what happens is that we can switch between the various feeds from the various agencies as they're coming in, and that can be broadcast. The other great thing that we have at the Babcock facility for the Fire and Rescue Service is that we got access to drones. So we can have a drone up over the top that then can feed that and have a live feed. So if students can't necessarily see exactly what's going on from the side, we can actually feed that information from above. And one of the things that's really important to us is that this isn't just about learning for the students, it's about learning for everybody. And so what we have is as soon as each scenario finishes, we have a hot debrief, what we call a Jessup hot debrief for all the responder agencies. They kind of come together and kind of what went well, what didn't go well. And at that point, we can also then release, by the way, did you realize that, that particular patient or the baby we put under the seat took a little bit longer to find. There may be things that didn't go as well as they could have done, and that comes out in that Jessup hot debrief for the responders. And then for the casualty volunteers, as they come out, we do an initial triage to check that they feel okay, because this is quite a stressful thing to do. And then we have a hot debrief from our casualty volunteers, so we can then feed that information back to our responders at a later date, saying, oh, this particular person felt they got a little bit lost. They felt like they were forgotten about. They were inside the car. So we have, or they felt a little bit hot or cold, or they were left out in the rain or something. So we can actually feed that specific information back to the responders. So everybody's gaining from this experience, not just the students. And then the students that are all observing, we then get senior staff from the Welsh Air Ambulance, IMERTS, who then give them a hot debrief on the scenario that they've just seen. So each of the observers will have seen one of those scenarios. So they may have seen a procedure that perhaps they don't understand, or they didn't understand why it was a particular agency took control, mainly control of the RTC compared to another. Why there were, people were wearing tabards. What was the significance of a white helmet versus a yellow helmet? Very simple things of just trying to make sense of that chaos of what they've just seen play out in front of them.
Well, I tell you what, Tim, I think I'm identifying some players amongst our audience, and I'm if perhaps Mike Prickett, Inspector from South Wales Police, if you wouldn't mind putting your microphone and camera on. And am I right in thinking Richie Matthews as well from South Wales Fire? Are you on the call? If you're both on the call and willing to jump on and speak, that will be fantastic. But
oh, there's Mike. Hello, Mike.
Oh,
good day, sir.
Mike, tell us why you come, why you get involved, because what do the police bring to it, and what can you take from it?
I think, as Tim said, it's just grown massively. Initially, I think the focus was on to support year 2 medical students with external trauma, because obviously they've been protected in the hospital environment, and for them to understand what it's like outside trauma. But I think over the years it's grown and grown and grown, where the potential now is for us to utilize it for the emergency services as well. And I think the training, the reality of it all is just fantastic for all of us to get involved. So I think every one of us now is gaining so much from it because of the reality, because of the size, the scale of it. And it's all the emergency services are there. So in terms of the medical students, they're getting to see some real live situations, the noise, the smell, the sound, they're not going to be used to that. And for us then, it's to be able to put a mixture of, from my perspective, roads policing officers or just BCU police officers into these scenarios of that live initial chaos of that scene, to understand the importance of getting it right, the protection of that scene, the safety is the priority. It's quite easy to jump into scenarios, but the priority really is the safety. And then to break it down and to work closely with all the emergency services. As Tim quite rightly said, Jessup is very important for us in terms of major incidents. The communication, the understanding of what roles each emergency service has performed is vital for it to be successful. So overall, I have to say, for this to be successful, you need someone like Tim, because the work that he does and how it's developed is amazing. So this wouldn't be a success without Tim driving it forward. He has made this to be so successful, without a doubt. And it is, the benefits that I'm seeing from the officers are coming back, and the feedback from us is, it's great. And I'm sure the other emergency services are saying the same thing.
Oh, thanks very much, Mike Prickett. Tim, let's just talk about I think you mentioned about 60 who would volunteer to be part of the scenarios. How much of a recruitment pain is that for you, or do they step up readily and you have to just send many away?
No, actually, it's interesting, and I think the first year it was like pulling teeth, no one wanted to step up. But it's gradually grown and grown. I said the message trickles out year to year. By the way, you get a lot from this. Now, if you think of a cohort of about 320 students, potentially 35 or 40 of those students will actually be interested in specializing in acute medicine. Not necessarily pre-hospital. It'll either be hospital front door, emergency department, ICU, or some of them again. And we have 5 or 6 every year that go, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to be coming out of an air ambulance, and this is the sort of stuff that I want to do. And so we generally don't have to turn. We don't generally. If someone got their audio on, someone just turned their audio off. Thank you.
Someone was singing.
That's it. Someone was singing. But yeah, it was great this year in particular. We always like in one of the scenarios to create some sort something that challenges responders to do a large triage. So we always usually have, if someone volunteers, we'll give them a role. And Thomas of Rhondda, the bus company, were really great this year. They lent us a bus, so we were actually able to do a really great simulation, so we could actually do practice 10-second triage, which is the triage system which was adopted post Manchester Arena bombings, and that's one of the things that was kind of top of the list of every agency. We really want to be able to practice 10-second triage. So with a bus, I can fill that bus with, I don't know, I think it was a 49-seater bus. It's a 49-seater bus, and then several cars around. I've got plenty of capacity for having casualty volunteers. Now I know you mentioned, is Richie still on the call? Because I think is he still there? I don't know if he can talk at all. So Richie Matthews.
I think he's just left. Now you mentioned his name, he's gone.
That's a shame. Not to worry. But I want to, big things up to Richie as well, because without him, so Richie Matthews, he's a watch manager at the South Wales Fire and Rescue Service Training and Development Centre at Cardiff Gate, and without him and his boss Roger McGann, none of this would have happened either. So a massive, without them, none of this.
He's
would have
back.
happened. Oh, he's
back. Richie, would you like to join us? We see are you able to? Richie Matthews.
Maybe he's dropped out.
No, here he is.
Hello, Richie.
Microphone's on. Give us your take on why do fire and rescue get involved? What do you bring to it, and what do you get out of it?
So, you know what? I think he's on his phone in his office.
I think.
Oh, I don't think we're hearing you terribly well, Richie. We'll come back to you if you put your hand up if you find that you can help, and anybody else, please. Now we'll open this up to questions to Tim Johnson. So just put your hand up, and we will come to you in order, because it's quite clever in that regard. I think Teams will give us a running order of people of a kind of a queuing system. Actually, I remember I met the man who invented, when you're in casualty or you're buying shoes for your kids, you take a little ticket. There was someone called Roger Dudding who invented that, and he became a very, very rich man. And I think last time I knew, he had a fleet of about 200 classic and very expensive cars. So anyway, that's just me going off at a tangent. We'll wait to see who wants to talk. I've got loads more questions. Let's talk about from the it's a clinical exercise primarily, isn't it? But there's a strong road safety dimension to it. So let's think about and Sarah Jones mentioned this in our little video at the start about prevention, weaving in messages about prevention. And here's another key thing I want to talk to you about is bystander intervention and the wider safe system. So let's just sort of reflect on wider road safety. Take any of those themes. I mean, I know bystander intervention is a big thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things that a big message, as Sarah said in that video, was what we want to try and do is not treat the person in the first place and stop actually these collisions happening. And that's sort of embedded through the training, as you saw in the pre-seminar event. That was a big part of the message. Sarah started the seminar by actually saying, well, here are the statistics, and you're looking around the audience, and unfortunately the gentlemen in the audience are of their age, are the ones that are most likely to be cause of those collisions. We also are fortunate in that the road safety teams from South Wales Fire and Rescue Service had the opportunity on the actual live simulation day to provide some road safety messaging, and that's a big thing for me. Now, you then, as I've talked to you at length, I'm very interested in this challenge that we have of bystander hesitancy, and it's something I think all of us that within the team, Mike, myself, Richie, Roger, George, we've noticed over the years that there seems to be I have a concern about confidence in our students to be the first one that steps up. I'm now going to do something. I'm going to intervene. And it's not just medical students. It's a generational thing. And we know one of the first things that people are likely to do when there's some major traumatic incident is the first thing they do is they pick up you can't see this, my mobile phone. They pick up their mobile phone and they just start recording on their mobile phone. And yet, the algorithms, everything tells us that the most likely thing that's going to mean that a casualty potentially that's arrested in that scene is going to survive is by having a member of the public, a first responder, a bystander, go in and do something. You've got a 4, 8, 10, whatever minute delay, and in terms of getting CPR and getting some intervention, that's too long. And the likelihood is that exponentially, the chances of that person surviving just exponentially tails off very, very quickly. And it concerns me that I always say to, students ask me, why are you doing this now? I'm only in year 1. I'm only in year 2. And I always say, you know what? It won't be long before you're going to hear those words that you're in a room and someone says, is there a doctor in the house? Or you're on a plane and said, is there a doctor on the plane? And it doesn't matter to a member of the public that you're in Freshers Week at Cardiff University and you're a medical student. If you turn around and say to somebody, I'm a medical student, you know what? There is an expectation. And so very early on in the program, I think it's really important that we give students that exposure so they have that confidence. Now, I want to quote a student as Alessia Mahoney. Now, she's graduated now. And Mike knows, Mike and Richie, everybody on this call now, we use this every time when people ask us, why are you doing this? Now, Alessia went through our training in May, and after she'd finished that training in November, she sent an email to all of us and said, oh, I thought you might want to know. I was in Cardiff the other day, and I was in my car, and I was witness to an accident, and quite a major road traffic collision. And she said that, she just that split second, what do I do? Do I get out of the car now? And she did. She went through, she got out of the car, did a quick triage, did a 360, checked for safety, made sure the ignition was off, prioritized the casualties, got other people involved. And she said without what we had done, the situation definitely would have unrolled very, very differently, and potentially there would have been fatalities at the scene. And that for us, to me, was like, that takes it. Why do we do it? That's why we do it. But it's not everybody. And it's just, we want to give the confidence to our students that, they may want to specialize being a psychiatrist in years. They may not be interested in emergency medicine. But it doesn't matter. Member of public says, oh, is there a doctor here?
we want to give them the confidence to be that person to provide those first interventions.
And I'm going to ask Lisa Malone, who has her hand up, to turn microphone and camera on. Hello, Lisa Malone. Tell us a bit about you first,
Lisa.
and then we'll take it from there.
Hi guys, I'm Lisa. I'm a risk management consultant with Aon. So I'm not in the medical field at all, but a big part of my role is advising and working alongside a lot of our commercial fleet. So Aon are essentially an insurance broker, and we place insurance for large fleets. And my job is helping them keep their drivers safe, essentially. So a big part of my role is advising our clients and telling their drivers what to do at the scene of an accident, the information to collate, and it's all well and good in theory, but this is why I was so interested in this, because you do the real life simulation. So we cover all the policies, the processes, all of the compliance to do with fleets. But I feel like something like this would be, and it'd be interesting to see how I could potentially make this work. It's getting my brain ticking as I'm listening to you going through the scenarios. But yeah, it's driver safety is a big part of what I do. So I'd be really interested, Tim. I know that you've done this with obviously your medical students, but have you ever had any interest from companies or insurers, or have you ever had anyone like that approach you to try and work and build something for them?
No, not from insurers, but the team I work with, we were approached by South Wales Police about just over a year ago because they were running a much larger multi-agency exercise called Operation Tenley. Now, at Operation Tenley, it was a major incident exercise. It wasn't kind of a short 45-minute. It was a big several hours where we were simulating the closure of Junction 34 of the M4. And it was a big event. It was a mass casualty event. And the reason why I mention this is that the agencies involved in that had a much wider remit. We had Sutra, so we had the various highways agencies, we had the local health boards, the councils, we had a control center in Bridgend in the control center itself. So all the assets were being controlled in that simulation. So we actually had a much wider interest there for, I mean, there were several agencies, a lot of whom I can't even remember the list. So that we're focusing on the wider aspect of how do you distribute casualties, getting data on how long will that road be closed for, what impact will it be having on highways. But yeah, that's where those bigger incidents is where that data can be collected. But yeah, we've never had, no one commercially has come to us and said, well, I'd be all ears, I'd be interested, but
it's just to give you an idea of the scale of, I mean, well, it's clients that we see on our road every day, from big retailers that are running 2,000 to 3,000 vehicles on the road. And then I've got mixed fleets that are cars and vans, but we obviously see all of the claims that happen. And some of them are pretty nasty. I was actually in a bad car crash myself 3 years ago while driving for work. And I did a post-collision on-road training course to help me get behind the wheel after. And it was one of the best things I could have done. It actually made me a better driver after as well. Even though the crash wasn't my fault, but still, there was really good learning from it. And from the back of that, a lot of the clients I work with who've had drivers who've been in pretty bad crashes have done the same course as well, and it's helped. So it's that ripple effect of helping people. So one thing I'm working on at the minute as well is creating like a driver aftercare program and getting insurers to fund it. So if somebody's in a really bad crash, and often insurance, it's all about bent metal. It'll get repaired or replaced. That's great. What about the person behind the wheel? How are we going to help them get behind that wheel again? So it's understanding, therapy that we can help them with, and on-road training as well. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent there, but it's other stuff I'm interested in.
I think
Lisa, it's really interesting.
We've got Richie's just put in his hand. I think Richie from the fire service might be able to give a little bit of input if his audio's working. Richie. Your
I
hands
think
up.
he's.
All right, fingers crossed the technology's working.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. I heard the question earlier about what we get out of it as well. I think to answer kind of both what we just talked about there, one of the things that we do beforehand, I'm sure Tim's already mentioned it, is we do have our road safety team there as well. So we've got to recognise within the fire service, not only are we doing the operational response training in this instance, but we're also looking at prevention. And to us, we've got, potentially 400, 500 young drivers. To go back to what Lisa was saying, one of the things we try to do is build into our scenarios the themes or things that are interesting for emergency responders this year or last year or the year before. So Tim's already mentioned 10-second triage. We had things like electric vehicles, things like hydrogen buses. Those types of things are all sort of relatively new to us. I think what we don't do, and again, Lisa, you've got my brain going now, is look at what's the cause of these incidents. Obviously, we do talk about the Fatal Five when we discuss it with the students, and kind of talk about speeding, mobile phones, and all that type of stuff. And we had a really interesting conversation on the Friday before about things like who wears seatbelts, and then when do they wear them in taxis, and do they wear them on the buses and stuff like that. So I think we do try and build that in, but as yet, Lisa, no, we don't. We don't really deal with sort of insurers or other people as part of what we do. But I'm sure Tim will invite you next time, and we'll be more than welcome to come down and see.
To try and link in with you guys after this, because obviously the insurers we deal with are like the big guys, so Aviva, Allianz. So a lot of what they do is they give us bursaries, which we spend with our clients, so we can get quite big bursary amounts to fund programs, to fund driver safety initiatives as well. So there's a lot of stuff that I do with clients. I'll organise driver training, collision investigation training. So there's so much. So I'd love to pick up separately with you guys after this to see if there's something we could potentially develop. I'll stop now in case anyone else wants to ask questions.
No, Lisa, that's brilliant. We'll definitely pick up on that. We're going to come to the end of this. I need to do a bit of wrapping up unless anybody does want to say anything. But I think it's really important to ask you, Tim, about how to replicate this. So if I'm another university, a medical school, or a trauma network, and I'm listening to what you're doing, and what 2 or 3 pieces of advice might you offer that would be practical to help us get going and to build the right partnerships to make something like this happen elsewhere?
Yeah, let me see. There's lots of bits of advice. As I said, it's the contacts, it's who you know, it's finding those passionate people, and things will come together. But I always think of who was it? JJ Pershing. So he was head of logistics in World War One, and what was his quote? He said, "Infantry win battles, logistics win wars." And one of the things I think people said to me, how are you going to get this off the ground and going? And actually, it's once you've identified passionate people, things will fall into place. And that is less of a worry to me. The thing you really need to just get right is just make sure that everybody knows where they're supposed to be and when. They're properly briefed, they're fed, and they're watered, and they're safe. And so it's logistics. Just putting the logistics together and making sure you've dotted all the I's, crossed the T's, the other way around. Actually, you've got a small team of passionate people like Mike, George, Richie, Scott, Will, Katie, these from Welsh Ambulance, from MedServe. Once you've got that team together, things will generally fall into place because, these are passionate people, passionate about making roads safe, passionate about casualty care, passionate about making sure that families are looked after, unfortunately, in the event of there being a fatality, and things are done right. And I think that's, universities, by them, they're educational facilities. They are specialized in disseminating knowledge. And it's just a perfect partnership, really. We can bring our expertise as an educational facility together with the emergency services. And hopefully everybody does gain from this. As Mike said, it started out largely focusing on the students. Actually, it's grown into something wider. And it's just, I would, recommend to anyone out there in a medicine program, at a university, anyone running nursing programs, any health-related sort of disciplines, just to make those contacts. Focus on logistics. I'd say it's usually those things that, are the things that trip you up. Get them right, particularly if people are fed and watered, they've got something to eat and they're warm and dry and they know what they're doing, then actually generally things work very well.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, Tim, thank you. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you just want to say in a couple of minutes?
There is one, Matt, on the chat. He says, given the advances in simulation and realism, are participants offered or encouraged to engage in TRM or similar counselling service? Yeah, it's a really good point, Matt. And one of the things we have to be very careful of is that, there are simulated casualties. Okay, we have casualty volunteers. And one of the things that we are very sensitive to is that it doesn't matter how much you tell a student or casualty volunteer, this is simulation. It isn't real. You stick them inside a car that's in a very confined space, and then they have a blanket put on top of them as the car is that's quite a stressful thing to do. And it's interesting. We're doing a lot of work on their reaction. They are naive casualties. So they've never been in that situation before. It's a very different situation if you had someone who's an experienced member of the fire crew acting as a volunteer, to having someone who's never been put into this position as a volunteer. And we triage all of our casualty volunteers when they come off the yard because, physiologically, they're in a very different state from when they started. And that's really interesting and that's really valuable information because that experience that they've had is really valuable to the responders because it actually, you are running a fine line between, and that's why our risk assessment, we're very strict on the process as how we recruit volunteers, is that you've always got the potential in simulation, and you have to recognize that, yes, they're a simulated volunteer, but you have to treat them as a real casualty because of the stress that they're under, they could become a real casualty. And so, we are very cautious when people come out of this, of each of the simulated scenarios, that they are triaged and counseled afterwards in terms of their experience.
Dr. Tim Johnson, thank you so much for sharing its insight into the Cardiff simulation and the impact it's already having on students and partner agencies. I'm going to make sure that links to this will be shared. So we'll send you all an email of the recording of this. And I know a few people have asked for the links of the 2 different videos. I tell you what, I just want a thumbs up from everybody who's on the call that we do not use the word accident. We say collision or crash. So thumbs up from everybody, please, to agree.
Yeah, sorry.
You can't leave till you've thumbs up.
Yeah. And I've just put my email contact in the chat. If you just have a look in the chat, please feel free to contact me. And we're interested. We don't, provided, every year, if people show interest and provided we got space and they can come and see, people are welcome to attend and join us. Where possible, we have an open door for everybody because we want everybody to gain from the experiences that we're providing. And that's from wider, not just responders, from a wider aspect, governments, health boards, etc., as well as insurance companies now. More than happy.
I'm very grateful, Tim. Thank you. Just if you're interested, Project Edward, next Thursday, we have the last of our 4 webinars on protecting young drivers. That's at 11 o'clock with the police crime commissioners of Warwickshire and Durham. At 2 o'clock, we're taking a pause for breath 6 months after the launch of the road safety strategy from the Department of Transport. That's Thursday at 2 o'clock. Next Friday at 11 o'clock, we have motorcycle safety developments, including an input from my 16-year-old son, who today, aged 16 years and 1 day, is doing his compulsory basic training. That's why I'm here in Pontypridd in my car, and launching his career as a road user on a powered 2-wheeler. Make of that what you will. But look, thank you very much, everybody, for joining. Next first Friday is beginning of September, where we're doing child car seats. And in October, our first Friday, I'm very excited. We've got the Crown Prosecution Service talking to us about death by dangerous, death by careless. It's not to be missed. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.